الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Last week we looked at some of the teachings of Islam with regard to our neighbors and what it means to be a good neighbor. And today we will move on to another category that Islam has given importance to, our relationship to this group of people within society, which is ulama, knowledgeable people and scholars. And this is related to the importance Islam gives to scholarship and knowledge itself. According to a very famous hadith of our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, he says there are 4 categories of people. And 3 of those categories will be able to achieve salvation and success, but one of those categories will not. Those categories that are looked upon with favor by Allah, they are first the alim, one who has knowledge. 2, the muta'allim, one who's seeking to learn. Now, I think of student generally as a phase of life. So, if I'm 12, if I'm 15, these days because schooling is secondary school, then you have college, then you have graduate school, so even maybe somebody in their 20s, it's not embarrassing to be a student. But then some of us, we kind of think that a phase of our life ends and we are no longer a student. If I'm in my 30s, if I'm in my 40s, if I'm in my 60s, I think I'm not a student anymore, or I might not even be very comfortable as a student or in an environment of learning. That's part of our career, part of our secular life. But when it comes to our spiritual and our religious life, we should be a student regardless of our age or our other accomplishments whenever there is information that is available for us to learn. I might even be somebody with a great deal of religious knowledge, but when I meet somebody more knowledgeable than myself, then I become a muta'allim. If I'm old or young, a graduate, even a professor of Islam, and maybe I have students, but then when I meet somebody more knowledgeable than myself, then I don't say I am an alim or I am an allama or I am a graduate of Sunday school or I know this material or this is old material. What do I say? I am a student, and it is my honor and a gift from Allah to learn. So graduation, when it comes to religious and spiritual well-being, it doesn't exist, regardless of what you may have studied and what you may know. وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ. Above everybody possessed of knowledge, there is somebody with greater knowledge, and when I am honored by Allah to have access to that greater knowledge, then I am a humble and thankful student, and not somebody who wants to show what I have learned or memorized or what I may know. Even prophets. Even Prophet Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, who was a leader and one who brought a book and a scripture and taught his community Tawheed and fiqh and all of the teachings of their religion. So we call, even in English, we say Mosaic law, the law of the Torah or the law of Moses. Such a pivotal figure for Bani Israel and for the story of God's religion on earth. But he was also a student when he met Khidr alayhi salam. This is a principle in Islam. Alim aw muta'allim aw muhib. Sometimes I might not be able to teach, or I might not be able to learn. Maybe I'm far away from an environment where I have access to somebody who can give me greater knowledge. So, alaykum salam, what is my obligation at that point? I should be a lover of that culture of learning, a supporter of the institutions of learning. I should show my respect and my appreciation for that institution within our community. It's not, for example, the way that I might think about some other hobby that people have. Some people, they're interested in a certain sport and they learn that sport, they watch that sport. I don't have an interest in that sport, so it doesn't have anything to do with me. Or even maybe certain careers. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. People might say that my field is not really a technical field and I don't really care about how computers work and what the new technology is and what's going on. It's not really my cup of tea. That's fine. If it's not your field, it's not your interest, then you can separate yourself from it. But religious knowledge is not something that belongs to people who are full-time ulama or people who are the office holders or the volunteers at a masjid. It is the heritage that has been given to all of humanity, and in particular the Muslims, and especially the lovers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam, and it is all of our responsibility. It's a trust given to all of us. And so even if I am not an alim, even if I don't currently have access or ability to be a muta'allim and a student, I have a responsibility towards ilm and ulama and muta'allimin, the students. And that is expressed by muhib. Not just that I maybe volunteer or I donate, but I appreciate and I love that institution. So these are the three groups that our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, says are worth being a member of. Alim or muta'allim or muhibban lahuma. Be one of these three things. And then the Imam says, if you are anything else, meaning you don't have knowledge, and you're not trying to gain knowledge, and you don't care, that's them. And their interest or hobby or concern, it's not my cup of tea. Then the Imam says, فَتَهْلِكْ وَلَا تَكُنْ رَابِعًا فَتَهْلِكْ. If you are anything else, a fourth category, then you will be annihilated, halak. And that means it's going to be of damage to us in this world and in the hereafter. So our relationship with the ulama is because of our relationship to ilm. And let me make this point that sometimes people, they have criticisms or complaints, maybe about the character of a particular alim or the experience of a particular alim. The importance of ilm in Islam is because we have now the remnants of a heritage from ma'sumin. No non-ma'sum can fully represent the teachings of the ma'sumin. But when we don't have access to the ma'sum directly, then we value whatever we have access to, even if it is incomplete, even if it has many weaknesses or shortcomings or deficiencies. If I see something that is worthy of criticism, that's something that I don't need to ignore, but I should not ignore the greater good that comes from being connected to our heritage and our values, which comes through honoring and appreciating the teachings of Ahlul Bayt. So that is just a brief reminder, what are some of the teachings that we have in Islam about ulama? Let us begin by looking at Surah Al-Zumar in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, قُلْ هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ إِنَّمَا يَتَذَكَّرُ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. In the Quran, Allah says, are those who know and those who do not know equal? Only those people will take heed and remember who are possessed of lub, or albab, intellect and wisdom and insight. So what does this verse tell us? First of all, the Quran pushes back against the assumption that we have of equality. Many times we have a slogan of equality, and there's nothing that is intrinsically wrong with that slogan. Equality in its place is an Islamic value. Nobody more than our Imams showed that even when Imam Ali, as the Caliph, is a party in a court case, a litigation with a non-Muslim citizen of his rule, he says that the judge must look at each of us equally. And then I am not Amirul Mu'mineen with a title, and the other person is an individual. But I am Ali ibn Abi Talib, and the other person is called by their name, because the law must treat people with equality. Justice demands equality in that case. But then there are times when justice does not demand equality. And in fact, equality will be unjust. If you put a child on equal footing with an experienced adult, then you've done an injustice to that child. So the highest ideal in Islam is justice. And where justice asks for equality, then equality is good. But where justice says there should be special instructions or special protections or a difference in how we think or how we act or how we treat somebody, then it is justice that we should aspire to. And one of those things that gives us a difference, which is meaningful and which should be remembered, is ilm and jahl can never be on equal footing. I'm not talking about legal rights or the right to vote, but in our culture, I shouldn't say everybody is entitled to an opinion. When Muslims come together, whether it's just myself and a few friends, whether it's a family setting, whether we have a general meeting of a masjid or an Islamic institution, we shouldn't come with that jahili culture that everybody has an opinion. This is the jahili culture that, well, I'm a person, I have a right to an opinion. I have been given intellect by Allah. I have been given curiosity by Allah. I have been given opinions by Allah. Why? So I can learn and I can contribute constructively to society. All of those are resources. All of those are tests. They don't mean that I have a right automatically to express my opinion. Whether I'm in a small setting or a large setting, a formal setting or an informal setting, an in-person setting or an online setting, in all of those cases there is a responsibility. And I should be aware of what I know and what I'm qualified to have an opinion on and what I'm not. For example, myself, I'm not an expert on medicine or vaccines. I can have questions. I can have concerns. Maybe I have skepticism about the Western medical system and its funding and its other reasons. But I should know, even if I have watched a few YouTube videos and I've received a few hundred WhatsApp messages and I have certain questions or skepticism, that this is not my area of expertise. I should know that at the same time. What we forget in our society often and in our general culture is that when I am not qualified, then there should be a limit to how much I allow myself to express an opinion. That's where our society makes a mistake. Everybody thinks that I have a right. What's the logic the Quran gives us? هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Those who know and those who don't know cannot be equal. It's a question, but the answer is assumed within the question. And so I should know, first of all, where do I fit? And then I should know who are the people of knowledge. So just for me to say, well, I don't know, that's not going to give me any benefit. I'm not a legal expert. I'm not a medical expert. I'm not an expert in so many areas. Even some of those things that I think I'm an expert in, I might not be an expert. But that's not enough. Then I need to find out who are الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ. Who can I refer to? In all areas of life, but in particular religion. And then the Quran, it also takes us to the next step. What is the purpose of ilm? This is another area where our culture in general and our society has a major failing. Knowledge is not important because it's trivia. I know these facts. Knowledge is not important because it can earn you an income. Knowledge is power, knowledge is money. These are not really what knowledge is valuable for. If it gives you power, it also gives you responsibility. And if you have true knowledge, you realize how little power you have. Knowledge is not just a tool for money or for power or for influence or for career advancement or whatever else people may want. In this verse, we also have a reminder why knowledge is important. إِنَّمَا يَتَذَكَّرُ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. Why does Allah speak of tadhakkur? Taking heed, remembering. Because the purpose of ilm is not for me to say I have a degree. The purpose of ilm is not for me to say I know more than you know, or I can sound educated, or I can earn a good income, or I can become powerful and influential, or whatever else. Generally, when we know something, we feel better than somebody who doesn't know. But the Quran says your knowledge is only as valuable as you have tadhakkur. As much as you take heed, and it has been absorbed into your soul, and therefore you will be humble. So when I think I'm better than you because I know something, when I can't stop myself from finishing your thought, correcting you, if you make a small mistake, you say, for example, maybe just by mistake, that the Prophet spent 13 years in Medina. And then some of us, all of a sudden, it's as if we can't control ourselves. No, it was 10 years in Medina, not 13. 13 years was in Mecca. Small things sometimes. We immediately judge another person because they didn't know, or they made a mistake, or they forgot. That's not ilm. Ilm is that which gives us tadhakkur. إِنَّمَا يَتَذَكَّرُ. And what is it that gives us tadhakkur? Ulul albab. That's what intellect and wisdom and insight is. So in this simple verse, 2 sentences, the Quran is trying to get us to look at ilm and aql, knowledge and intellect, in a different way than we normally do. Rather than thinking of it as a tool for our personal goals, we should think of ilm as a means to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And rather than think of ilm as something that is its own honor, it is an honor insofar as it brings us closer to Allah. What that means is if there is somebody with a great deal of knowledge, but they don't have piety and they don't practice remembrance of Allah, then for me, they're not going to impress me or influence me. I'm not going to fall under their spell. They may be very influential. They may have many followers. They may even be a religious speaker whose videos attract many listeners. But if what I'm getting from them is facts and not tadhakkur, then I will say that's not for me. Or it might be somebody who is not religious and they're an expert in science or in whatever field. I should not be under that spell. And then I should also seek knowledge for this purpose. This is one of the verses of Quran which gives us a culture of ilm from an Islamic perspective, which is different from a non-Islamic perspective. And let us look at one hadith of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi. And then we will conclude this khutbah. Our Prophet says, فضل العالم على العابد كفضل القمر على سائر النجوم ليلة البدر. Badr in Arabic means the full moon. And if you ever look at the night sky, when it's a clear sky, there's no light pollution, there's no clouds, then if you look at the night sky when there is a full moon, then you see stars and they are faint points of light, and then you see the full moon, which is larger and brighter and more beautiful than anything else in the sky. It's inspired many poets and many artists and many people throughout human history until the present day. Our Prophet says that the virtue of an alim over an abid is just like the brilliance of that full moon in its size and its splendor and its beauty over any other star that you can see in the night sky. Now, of course, this is because the ilm is the highest form of ibadah. It is the ilm that the Quran is speaking about, which makes you conscious of Allah. That is far more valuable than just ritual or empty practice. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us ilm and a connection to the people of ilm, the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam, so we can follow them in our lives. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar. فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين، لا سيما علي أمير المؤمنين، وعلى فاطمة الزهراء، وعلى الحسن والحسين، وعلي بن الحسين، ومحمد بن علي، وجعفر بن محمد، وموسى بن جعفر، وعلي بن موسى، ومحمد بن علي، وعلي بن محمد، والحسن بن علي، والحجة بن الحسن القائم المهدي، عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل الله مخرجه وظهوره وجعلنا من أعوانه وأنصاره والمستشهدين بين يديه. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. In the second khutbah, in the interest of time, I will just quote one hadith from our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi. The Prophet is reported to have said that I asked Jibreel, the angel who would give revelation to our Prophet and to previous prophets, Al-ulama'u akram am ash-shuhada? Al-ulama'u akramu indallah am ash-shuhada? Who is more honorable in the eyes of Allah? Those people who have ilm or those people who are martyred? And of course we all know how much emphasis the Quran has placed on being willing to sacrifice ourselves for the path of Allah, and how much the sayings of our Prophet and the practice of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt. Whenever there was an opportunity for shahada, for sacrifice, then Prophet Muhammad put himself first, and his closest, nearest and dearest members of Ahlul Bayt. And all of the nearest and dearest ones of the Prophet, they offered themselves for martyrdom, and his progeny, they were martyred one after the other. So the shahada is a great rank, and shuhada have a great rank. But when it comes to the comparison, Jibreel responded to the Prophet, Al-alimul wahidu akramu ala Allahi min alf shaheed. A single person who has ilm is better in the eyes of Allah than 1,000 martyrs. فَإِنَّ اقْتِدَاءَ الْعُلَمَاء بِالْأَنْبِيَاءِ. Because the ulama, they are following in the footsteps of anbiya. The ulama are the ones who are learning from and trying to preserve, in a society filled with ignorance, the message of the prophets. وَاقْتِدَاءَ الشُّهَدَاء بِالْعُلَمَاءِ. And then for people to become martyrs, they want to follow the teachings of the ulama. Because if I have a spirit of sacrifice without knowledge, then I can offer my life for a cause that is not worthy. I can offer my life in a way that is not proper. And even some people with good intentions commit crimes in the name of their faith and in the name of their beliefs. What is it that makes a person a true mujahid fi sabilillah? Struggling in the way of Allah according to the teachings of Islam, and not somebody whose life is wasted or who commits improper actions, that is ilm, and following the ulama. And of course, if a person is an alim, then when the time for shahada comes, they will be willing to give shahada. But if ilm does not exist, then there will not be shahada as well. People won't know what is right and what it means to offer ourselves to what is right. So that is the importance in Islam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to combine the attributes of love for ilm and love for shahada as we find in the seerah of our imams. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام على علي أمير المؤمنين. السلام على فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام على الحسن والحسين وعلي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن القائم المهدي صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين. صلوات.